Okay. So we're working again with speech, and we're working with communication, which has been our focus for these last 6 weeks now. And I chose this because I think that, well, one, it's an area that I would like to improve myself. So I always think of, myself as being the best student of the course. So when I want to learn something, I want to go deeper into it in the way of teaching. And then I also did it because there's a great power in our words, and that's what I want to talk about today. That whenever we're speaking something, this is more of like the esoteric, the yogic teachings around it, is that whatever you say is being recorded in what's called your sound ring. And this sound ring develops all the way from childhood. So from the moment that you are conceived or you land in your mother's womb, whatever you're resonating with, in Kundalini Yoga, we say the 120th day after conception is the day that the soul lands in the womb. From that moment on, your sound ring starts to build. So that's all of the things that you hear. So that's why we're playing mantras for the children. That's why we're listening to mantras. That's why we're chanting mantras. And then also anything else that you hear. And then when you start to speak yourself, then it becomes everything that you say as well sits in your sound ring. So I had personally a very interesting experience with this when I went to my first Vipassana, which was a 10-day silent retreat. So for 10 days, we were just meditating and spending time in silence. Wonderful experience. I love it. Highly, highly, highly recommend to do that at some point. But what I had as a really interesting insight was that I experienced very deeply my own sound ring. So that means that all of the things that were kind of sitting in that frequency around me, and some of them are louder than others. So whatever we are amplifying, whatever we kind of remembered, what we remember, what is important to us, all of those things are largely determined by the subconscious mind. But for example, if you play mantras all the time, have you ever had that experience that you then go around and you start to hear mantras? How is that? How come? It's because they're sitting in the sound ring. But at that time, I didn't know about the Kundalini mantras, and I wasn't into Kundalini yoga yet, at least not in the way that I am now. So I wasn't using the mantras in this way. So what was sitting in my sound ring was all sorts of garbage, from like TV jingles to, I was watching a lot of TV, like Friends and Sex and the City, like all of these conversations from this TV show, or like the jingles, all of that was what I kept on hearing. And I was like, this is wild. This is so weird. I wasn't like freaked out. Some people really get freaked out at those retreats, and they're like, I think I'm sick. I think I'm not well. I was just like, interesting, curious. And then of course, playing all of those like conversations I'd had with people, even like my own read track of those conversations, because sometimes it's not the actual conversations. We will go in and we will adjust, and it becomes a different conversation. And sometimes if we're still if something is unresolved about that, we will continue playing it over and over, because the mind is not understanding, what happened. Something feels unresolved, and we'll just continue kind of reinforcing those conversations. Very interesting experience, very interesting. Then I did another one, which was not like a full 10 days, but it was like a 1 day of silence. And I did that many years later, and I was practicing Kundalini Yoga. And guess what showed up in my sound ring? Mantras. It was just different. It was just what showed up, what I kind of, my subconscious mind was listening to while I was meditating, was a lot of mantras. A few garbage pieces still here and there, but largely speaking, it was mantras. And that for me was like my kind of real life experience of this sound ring, that we can actually build what sounds are we surrounded by. So this is also where the power of speech comes in, because anything that we say in our life, so we have our personal sound ring, and then at the same time, we also have what's called the Akashic records, which records everything that is ever said and ever done. And that's why we want to be very mindful when we speak, right? We want to be very careful, very mindful. We want to weigh our words. We want to be certain that we're not saying things that are harming to other people or harming to ourselves. So again, simple teaching, not always so easy to follow. It can be very challenging.